Hey everyone, my name is Anna and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you guys how to crochet this Alpine stitch sweater. I'll be making a small here, but sizes X small to 3X large are included in this tutorial and also in the written pattern that I have linked down below. But here are all of the supplies you're going to be needing. So here are all of the supplies you're going to be needing for this project. Over here I have the Red Heart Super Saver category for yarn. You can use any color you would like, of course. Over here I have any pair of scissors. Then here is a 5.5mm hook. And we're also going to be needing a 4.5mm hook. And then also lastly a tapestry needle for seaming all of those loose ends. So now let's go ahead and move on with our pattern. So the first thing that we're going to be working on is our front and back panels. Our front and back panels are exactly the same, so this is what it's going to look like when we finish it. We have two shoulder straps and then we also have our main front / back panel. So the first thing that we're going to do is we will make a chain of 59 coming all the way across. I have listed the sizes from X small to 3X large right below the screen, so if you're making a different size you can just follow along with those instructions. I'm going to first make a slip knot, and you can do this any way you would like. After the slip knot, I'm going to do a chain of 59 because I am making a size small. So to do a chain, you just want to yarn over and just pull through. Again, yarn over and pull through. And then just keep on working this until you have a total of 59 chains, or until you have the total chains you need for your size. So I have now finished working my chain of 59. Moving on to row number 1, I'm going to skip this very first chain and inserting my hook into the second chain, we're going to do a single crochet. To work a single crochet, you want to insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then yarn over, pull through 2 loops. Doing this again into the next chain, I'm going to insert my hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops. One more time, insert your hook, pull up a loop, pull through 2 loops, and now just keep on working these single crochets into each chain all the way across. I'm going to work these all the way down, and then I'm going to see you guys back once I have reached the very end of my work. So once you have finished your single crochet row coming all the way down your chain, when you reach the end, you now want to make a chain of 2. And this chain of 2 does count as a stitch. I'm going to turn my work. So moving on to row 2, we are going to skip this first stitch because this chain 2 already counts as our first double crochet. Inserting our hook into the second stitch, we'll work a double crochet. To do that, I'm just going to yarn over, insert my hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, and then yarn over, pull through 2. Doing this again, I'm going to yarn over, insert my hook into that next stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Then just one more time, insert my hook, pull through 2, and then 2. Now just keep on working these double crochets into each stitch all the way down your row, and then I'm going to see you guys back once I have reached the very end of my work. So I just finished working all the way down my row with these double crochets. Now I'm just going to chain 1 and turn my work. This chain 1 does not count as a stitch. Moving on to row number 3, we're going to skip our turning chain and inserting our hook into this very first stitch. We're just going to be working the single crochets into each stitch all the way down our row. And then I'm going to once again see you guys back once I reach the end, as always. When you have finished working the single crochets all the way down our row, I'm just going to chain 2 and turn my work. So now we're actually going to be working on our main alpine stitch by this row. So to work our alpine stitch, I'm going to skip this very first stitch and inserting my hook into the second post. I'm going to yarn over, insert my hook behind this post, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2, and then yarn over, pull through 2. This is our very first front post double crochet stitch. Into the next stitch, you just want to work 1 regular double crochet. Into the next stitch, work a front post double crochet. Again, you just want to yarn over, insert your hook behind that post, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, double crochet into the next stitch. Into the next stitch, work another front post double crochet, and then double crochet again. And now keep repeating this pattern, working 1 front post double crochet and then 1 double crochet just like this all the way down your row until you have 1 stitch at the end of your row remaining. I'm going to go ahead, finish this up, and then I'm going to see you guys back once I have reached the very last stitch. So I have now repeated working my double crochets and then my front post double crochets all the way down my row until I had 1 stitch at the end remaining. Into this very last stitch, I'm going to work 1 regular double crochet. So you should have worked 2 double crochets into the 2 last stitches. I'm just going to chain 1 and turn my work. Now moving on to row 5, this is a very easy row. You just want to single crochet beginning to this first stitch all the way down your row and then chain 2 and turn your work. So when you finish working that regular single crochet row for row 5, I had already chained 2 and turned my work around. Now for row 6, we're going to pretty much do the same thing that we did for the last alpine stitch row, except this time into the second stitch, we are going to start off with a double crochet, not a front post double, but just a regular double crochet. And then into the next stitch, we're going to do a front post double crochet. And then to the next stitch, double crochet, and then a front post double crochet. So it should be creating this zigzag pattern, as you guys can see, which is a really pretty look, I think. And then just keep on repeating, working a double crochet, then a front post. Alright guys, so I just finished up working at this last alpine stitch row, alternating my front post double crochets and then my regular double crochets. And now to continue this pattern, you want to repeat those last 4 rows. So you should be working a single crochet row, a alpine stitch row, a single crochet row, alpine stitch row. So you should basically be working a single crochet in between each alpine stitch row. You want to do that until you have a total of 71 rows, and this is what your work should be looking like after 71 rows. However, you can make this however long you would like, just as long as you end on another single crochet row in between. So once you have all of your rows done, we're now going to move directly to working the first shoulder strap, so do not cut and fasten off just yet. We're actually going to move directly to working the first shoulder strap. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So moving on to the first shoulder strap, I have already chained 2 and turned my work around. So beginning on row 1 of our first shoulder strap, you just want to continue on working your alpine stitch row just as we were doing before. So just working your alpine stitch, except this time you want to do that until you have a total of 20 stitches. So you're not going to go all the way across your row, just into 20 stitches. So I have just finished working 20 stitches across my row. Now into the next stitch, we're going to do our first decrease of this pattern. To work a decrease, I'm simply going to yarn over, skip the next stitch, and then into this next stitch work 1 double crochet. So you should have skipped 1 stitch. Now just chain 1 and turn your work. Moving on to row number 2, this row is going to be a single crochet row because that is our regular pattern that we were doing before. So for this row, into the first stitch, we're going to do another decrease, except this is going to be a bit different. I'm going to insert my hook into that first stitch, pull up a loop. Now into the second stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through all 3. Now that's going to be our single crochet decrease. Now just go ahead and single crochet into each stitch all the way across until the end of your work. Then I'll just chain 2 and turn. Now moving on to row number 3, into this first stitch, we're going to work our regular Alpine stitch pattern, except this time you want to do that until you have 2 stitches at the end of your row remaining. Once we have those 2 stitches at the end of our row, we're going to do another decrease. So when you have these 2 stitches at the end of your row remaining, we're going to then skip 1 stitch and then double crochet into the next stitch. I'm just going to work 1 double crochet into this last stitch, then just chain 1 and turn. So to continue this pattern for our first shoulder strap, you just want to repeat those last 3 rows. So you should be working a decrease on one side of your work while one side stays a nice clean straight edge, but you want to be working a decrease always on this side of your work. Do that until you have a total of 6 rows for your shoulder strap. So I'm going to go ahead, work all of that up, and then I'm going to see you guys back once I am all done. So I have just finished up working my 8 rows with these decreases. You can see where the side that we decreased on and the side that we didn't decrease on. When I finished all of these 8 rows, I did cut and fasten off. So now that we are all done with our first shoulder strap, we're pretty much going to do the same thing or a very similar thing on the other side here for our second shoulder strap. So now let's go ahead and get started on that. So now getting started on our second shoulder strap, the first thing I'm going to do is just of course make a slip knot. When you have made this slip knot, to start the second shoulder strap, we're first going to count 13 unworked stitches. So as you guys can see, this is a worked stitch right here, and this is the first unworked stitch. So I'm going to count 13 unworked stitches. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then 13. When you count 13, you just want to skip 1 and insert your hook into that 14th stitch just like this. Then from here, you can just slip stitch to secure, so just yarn over and pull through everything. Now we're just going to chain 2. So to do a decrease here, I'm going to skip the next stitch, and then into the next stitch, I'm going to work a double crochet. Then from here, you can just work your regular Alpine stitch until the end of your row. Now I'm just going to chain 1 and turn. So moving on to row 2, beginning into this first stitch, I'm just going to single crochet into each stitch all the way across, except this time you want to make sure that there's 2 stitches at the end of your row remaining. And to these last 2 stitches, I want to show you guys how to do another decrease. into these last 2 stitches, I'm going to do that decrease, just insert my hook, pull up a loop, insert my hook into this very last stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 3, chain 2 and turn. So beginning on row 3, we're going to do another decrease. So I'm going to skip the next stitch and then into the next stitch, work that front post double, and then just double crochet, and then just do this alpine stitch until the end of your row. Now you can just chain 1 and turn your work. So to continue this pattern for our second shoulder strap is pretty much the same thing that we did on the first side. You just want to repeat those last 3 rows with our decreases. You should be decreasing on one side of your work while not doing any kind of decreasing on the other side of your work. Do that until you have a total of 8 rows, and then I'm going to see you guys back once I am all done to cut and fasten off. So I have now finished up working both of my shoulder straps. I did cut and fasten off once I reached the end of this row, and I had 8 rows in total, of course. So now that we have our entire front bodice all done, we did the front panel / the back panel and then both of our shoulder straps. You then want to repeat this process a second time, doing exactly the same thing, which I have already done over here. The same exact thing that we did before, so that we have a front and a back panel. Now we can just set these 2 pieces aside because we're going to get started on working the sleeves. So let's go ahead and move on with those steps. So now we're going to be moving on to working our sleeves. This is what it's going to be looking like. To get started, the first thing we're going to do is make a chain of 38. So I'm just going to make a slip knot as normal, and then after this just make a chain of 38. Once you have finished working this chain of 38, the next thing we're going to do is just run our fingers down our chain to make sure that it isn't twisted, and then slip stitch into the first chain that we made. So I'm just going to insert my hook into that very first chain, and then yarn over, pull through both of those loops. This should form a large circle. From here, I'm just going to chain 2 and turn my work around. Now beginning on row 1, this chain 2 does count as a stitch. So coming into this 4th chain of the row, I'm going to insert my hook and work my first double crochet. Then I'm just going to work double crochets into each chain all the way around, and then once I reach the end, I'm going to show you guys how to join it. So I have just finished working all the way around my chains with these double crochets, and now that we reach the end, we're going to join our row. To join this row, I'm just going to insert my hook into the very top stitch, or not the top stitch, but the top chain that we made, and then just slip stitch to secure, so pull through everything, just like this. From here, I'm going to chain 1 and turn my work. This chain 1 does not count as a stitch. We're going to do a round of double crochet. We're going to do a round of single crochets all the way around into each stitch, and then I'm going to see you guys back to join the row once again. Once you have made it all the way around with the single crochet round, we're now just going to slip stitch into this very first stitch. So this is the first stitch of the row, just like this, chain 2 and turn. So now we're going to be doing the same alpine stitch except a little bit different. For the first row, we're going to begin on a front post double crochet, and we're also going to end on a front post double crochet. That is because the middle stitch does count as a double crochet. So that sounds really complicated, but it's super easy. So I'm going to skip this first stitch, and then into the second post I will work those front post doubles, and then into the next stitch a double crochet, then a front post double crochet, and then a double crochet. Keep on doing this all the way around until the last stitch of your row. So I have worked all the way around with this Alpine stitch, except I left the very last stitch unworked, because into this very last stitch we're going to do one front post double crochet stitch. You want to make sure you end with a front post double crochet, and then now we're going to slip stitch into that very top chain to join the row, chain one and turn your work. The next row is just going to be a really easy single crochet round and then slip stitch into the first stitch to join. So I'm going to do that really quickly, and I'm going to see you guys back for the next Alpine stitch row. So I made it all the way around with the single crochets, and I thought I would show you guys how to join the single crochet row once again. I'm just going to slip stitch into this very first stitch, chain two and turn. Now moving on to the last repeat row into the second stitch, instead of working a front post double crochet that we did last time, we're going to start off with a double crochet, and then a front post double crochet, then a double crochet, and then a front post double crochet. Just keep on doing this all the way around. So I have almost finished working all the way around my row. Into the very last stitch I'm going to work one double crochet, and then just slip stitch into that top chain, chain one and turn. Now to continue this pattern for our sleeve, you just want to repeat those last 4 rows, which is row 2 to row 5, those last 4 rows, until you have a total of 37 rows. However, you can make this however long you would like. I'm choosing to make a total of 37 rows. So this is what my work looks like after I finished up working my 37 rows. And now the next part of our sleeve will be the cuff. So we're going to do a decrease row, and then we're going to do our cuff section. So to get started on this first, I'm going to release my hook, and then I'm going to replace it with a 4.5mm hook. Just insert it right in there. So the next row of our pattern is row 1. So into this very first stitch, we're going to do single crochet decreases in each stitch all the way around until the end. To show you guys how to do that again, I'm just going to insert my hook, pull up a loop, into the next stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops. One more time, I'm going to insert my hook, pull up a loop, into the next stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through all 3. And now just keep on working these decreases into each stitch all the way around, and then just slip stitch into the first stitch to join the row. So I have just finished working this decrease row coming all the way around with my 4.5mm hook. I'm just going to slip stitch into this first stitch to join, then just chain 2 and turn. Now we're going to do a row of double crochets into each stitch around. So just beginning into the second stitch, I'm just going to work these regular double crochets all the way around until the end of my work, and then just slip stitch into the first chain or the top chain when you reach the end. So I have made it back here. I finished that round of double crochets. I joined the row and then chain 2, turned my work. Now moving on to our actual textured part, which is back back post double crochets and front post double crochets. So into the second stitch, which is this post right here, I will work a front post double crochet. Now into the next post, I will work a back post double crochet. Into the next stitch, a front post double crochet, and then a back post double crochet. And then just keep on alternating working front post double crochets and back post double crochets until the end of your work. So I have now finished working all the way around for row 4, and I did front post double crochets and back post double crochets coming all the way around. The last stitch that I did was a front post double crochet, and then I just joined my work. So we can just chain 2 and turn. So moving on to the next row. Into the second stitch, instead of beginning with a front post double crochet, we're actually going to begin with a back post double crochet. And then into the next stitch, a front post double crochet. Then a back post double crochet. And then a front post double crochet. Now just repeat doing these back post double crochets and front post double crochets all the way around until you reach the end of your work. After you have finished that row, all you want to do from here is repeat row 3 and row 2, those last 2 rows, until you have a total of 12 rows for your collar. However, you can make this however long you would want. I'm going to go ahead, work up my 12 rows with these back post and front post double crochets, and I'm going to see you guys back to cut and fasten off. So when you have finished up working those last 12 rows, I did cut and fasten off. And from here, we are going to set our 2 sleeves aside, and now we're going to go ahead and get started working the borders, which is going to be the bottom border and the collar. So now let's move on with that part of the video. So here are the border, and then here is the collar. I have already demonstrated how to kind of do this pattern, so I'm not going to be showing you guys, I'm just going to be explaining what you want to do. So for the collar, you want to begin with a chain of 72. And then for row 1, you want to do a round of double crochets, and then you want to do 2 rounds working these back bar double crochets, and then these front post double, well, these back post double crochets and these front post double crochets. Do 2 rounds of that. It is literally the same exact thing that we did for the cuff. The bottom border is exactly the same, except you want to make a chain of 140, and then do the row of double crochets, and then 2 rows working these front post double crochets and these back post double crochets. Do 2 rows of those again. So once you have your collar and your bottom border, you can just cut and fasten off. And then from here, we're going to move directly to the assembly process, which is the last part of this video. So let's go ahead and get started on that. So now we're going to be moving on to the assembly process, which is really simple. Over here I have my yarn and my large tapestry needle. The first thing that I've done is that I have placed the front bodice and the back bodice with the good sides facing each other, so the wrong side should be facing us. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to whip stitch all the way up the side, so starting to this very bottom corner. You want to whip stitch all the way up the side until you have 6.5 inches from the top remaining. Those 6.5 inches from the top is going to leave room for our armhole. So if I just take my ruler and I just look where 6.5 inches is, I want to whip stitch all the way up the side until I have a 6.5 inches, leaving a nice space for our sleeves. And of course you do want to do that on the opposite side as well. But I'm just going to show you guys how to whip stitch. So I'm going to move all the way down here, and I have my needle and my thread. I'm going to make sure to line up these 2 sides. So now I'm going to get a little bit closer here. So to whip stitch up the sides, I'm going to insert my hook and then insert my hook into the back loop of the next panel and then just pull through. I'm going to come back around. I'm going to insert my hook into the next stitch and then the next stitch of the back panel and then just pull through into the next 2 stitches, pull through into the next 2 stitches, just like this. That's what it should be looking like. Just do this one more time. So once again, you just want to continue on whip stitching all the way up the side until you have 6.5 inches from the top. Then I'm going to see you guys back once I am all done. So I have made it back here. I ended up whip stitching all the way up the side of my work until I had 6.5 inches from the top. Did that on the other side as well, of course, starting to the very bottom corner, coming all the way up the side until 6.5 inches. The next thing that I also did was that I whip stitched together the 2 shoulder straps. You could probably notice that by now, but I whip stitched both of these shoulder straps. And the very last thing that we're going to do is just put the collar around, whip stitch all the way around, do the bottom border as well, place it against the bottom edge, whip stitch it together. And then you want to do the sleeves, putting them right against the side, whip stitching them to connect to the bodice, both of the sleeves on each side. So I have kind of already explained that to you guys, so I'm just going to go ahead, do the collar, the bottom border, and then both of the sleeves, and then I'm going to see you guys back with my finished sweater. So this is what my work is looking like once I have seamed together the collar, the bottom border, and then also both of the sleeves, as you guys can see. So once you have finished up working all of your pieces together, that is basically the end of your project. The last thing you would need to do is just weave in all of the loose ends to finish. But that is the end of the tutorial. I hope you guys enjoyed and found this helpful, and I hope to see you guys back next time. Bye! If you guys enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please consider liking and subscribing to my channel. If you bought this pattern, it would be super helpful if you left a positive review. But that is all, guys. Bye!